Beep, 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 beep. Just the news. Hello all, how are we? Buy me a coffee, would you? If you have, please. Buy me a coffee, Super thanks, YouTube. Most of all, if you're Canadian, American, and it's a reasonable time in your country, wherever you are, at 1 a.m. in the morning, the new Warrior Teacher Programme is starting at the beginning of June. For those of you that are interested in timeframes that are more applicable to, for example, the UK and Europe, the new cohort will be July. So we're looking at a new start. Is it going to be June or July? Don't know. I'm having a mull. I think it's probably going to be July because year 2 starting for the first crew in June. So it may well be July. Anyway, adverts for that will be going up in the next week or two. So if you're in the UK and or in Europe or associated countries where 6 in the evening is reasonable for you, then come become a warrior teacher. Other than that, enough of the waffle. Let's move on. What have we got today? Well, we have Rishi Sunak. Bless him. I was at a meeting and he was there. Tiny, small fella. It was in a high-rise hotel, one of these really tall buildings. So he could only reach the button to the 10th floor and he was on the 15th. So you had to press the 10th and then walk the rest of the way. He was there with his entourage, who were all significantly taller than he was. Impressive chap, though. Some impressive folks at that meeting, that particular meeting about levelling up. But he's on the ball. It seems he's on the ball. So he's come out and there's an article in the Telegraph in the Dubris view, as usual, because obviously it's in the Dubris. Go and have a look. All right, okay, and see what you think. If you want to read along, like we normally do. So let's go. Just a bit of background. UN released some information about children and sex, and everybody's gone, what? Are you deranged? It's an interesting conundrum, this, right? Now, the UN is attempting to bring together some kind of universal, global idea about, sex and children. That's what it's dealing with here, is the education, PSHE, RSE, of children and young people in sex. Now, the problem is, when you try to do that on a global scale, is that what you're essentially doing is to try to place a top-down morality on a very mixed bag of folk, So, and that ain't gonna happen. It's rather like, you remember people used to talk about multiculturalism? What a lot of guff that was. Like it would all become one thing, Multiculturalism. Now, truth be told, the French, for example, are very proud of their culture. The Egyptians are very proud of their culture. What makes everyone think for 1 second they're going to let that be amalgamated and stuck in with everybody else's? Multiculturalism, but yet still there it was, the idea of multiculturalism. This is a kind of multiculturalism of sex education, where the attempt is to try to get everybody on the same page. How are you going to do that when you've got countries like Afghanistan? So really this idea of this bringing together of a common human idea of how we should live and what we should do and how we should do it is proving to be a much larger nut to crack than the utopian dreamers at UNESCO and elsewhere believe that it will be. So, bugger off is my advice. We're better off small, right? What I mean by that is, years ago, living in small little enclaves, 50 at a time, or 100 at a time, or 150 at a time, gradually coming together, sharing ideas culturally, geographically maintained. It was all fab, we all came up together, and blimey, then the war started, mostly over who's going to have which bit of land or which bit of whatever it may be. It was all Game of Thrones, wasn't it? Tell Cersei it was me. It was all Game of Thrones. That's how it was for us. See, what's that going on? Right, so we've now got a situation where the UN are going, yeah, screw that. Let's everybody do the same thing. It ain't gonna happen, guys. Right, the UNESCO sustainability goals and sex education. You are living in cloud cuckoo land, and I think it's completely unfit for purpose, and we should scrap it. Right? But people get on with it. Just go away. We don't need you. Right? So Rishi's come out and had a pop about this guidance from the UN, sex education. Although I understand that it's got to be difficult to try and come up with something that's globally going to be accepted. And I think the UN have just realised that, without any doubt in my mind, with some of the ridiculous stuff that they've come up with, which is never going to, it's not going to, gain legs in the UK, let alone the US. Right? And then what happens when you go to somewhere with a country with great religiosity or with, predominantly a religious understanding of the world or religious worldview. Because what they're doing is they're not just messing around in people's values and morality. They're trying to use fact to do it. Now that's really hard because religion don't like fact, right? Values don't like fact. Some people have values despite facts. So by trying to enforce this type of stuff, they're not doing anybody any favours. Nice try, guys, but no cigar. All right. So let's have a look and see what Rishi's had to say about it, because that's rather interesting. Rishi Sunak has vowed to protect Britain's precious children amid concerns over sex education in schools. The Prime Minister has pledged that a government review of England's sex education curriculum will protect children from inappropriate sexual content and extreme views on gender. Well, thank you, right? I got a problem with that. So I'm already uptight this morning about it. Let me just say it again. Will protect children from inappropriate sexual content and extreme views on gender, right? Gender is immaterial. The only type of thing that can be taught about gender is gender identity ideology. That's the only thing that can be taught about it, apart from the fact that it's a dangerous construct once you get to the point where people try to enforce it. I don't understand what do they mean, right? So there's no such thing as extreme views on gender. People that are believers in gender being a thing are all extremists in my mind, but that's just me. First and foremost, as a parent, it's really important that what our kids are exposed to, not just at school but online, is sensitive and age appropriate, he said. Our children are precious and they deserve to be protected, he added, right? Yep, nobody's going to disagree with that. Standard pablum there from Rishi, thank you. His comments came as the government distances itself from the UN sex education guidance that recommends primary pupils are taught about sexual stimulation. Yo! I've done loads of this lately. I'm sick of talking about it. Let's get this done. UNESCO's international technical guidance on sexuality education. There's interesting stuff going. UNESCO's sustainability goals, all the stuff that comes with that. I did a piece about that a while ago. I'll stick it in the Doobrys. It's on my Substack. Right, about, go and have a look. Susan Mitchie, communist. I'm just joining the dots, man. I could be a nutter. A nutter. I may well be a nutter. I am, in fact, a nutter. But go and have a look anyway. This is mounting concern that the controversial UNESCO advice, which forms part of a wider UN education framework to which the UK is a party, was consulted during the drafting of teaching materials in this country. A Telegraph investigation has revealed that the guidance by UNESCO, an agency of the UN, recommended toddlers reflect on how they feel about their bodies and biological sex and gender. Toddlers, that's tiny things, isn't it? Little creatures. That's like, ooh, we ankle biters, as Mrs. Doubtfire would say. That's the little creatures, isn't it? So toddlers, what's wrong with these people? The Telegraph investigation revealed that they could ask toddlers about gender. What? This is back to Diane Ehrenshaft. I've mentioned her loads in the last couple of weeks, but this doesn't seem to be going away. I'm sick of talking about it. I imagine you're sick of listening about it. Bloody Ehrenshaft, with if a child tugs its locks, she'd think she's a nutter. The Telegraph can reveal it as informed sex education guidance for thousands of children across Britain. It's already being used, this stuff, leading to a backlash from MPs calling for the government to review its links with UNESCO. The guidance recommends that 9-year-olds should be taught to communicate and understand different sexual feelings and describe male and female responses to sexual stimulation. Why? Why? Right? From what I'm told by my mates, straight mates, right? Sexual stimulation from a female point of view is when you get the old legs are shaking. Right? And as being a male, I can tell you that, sexual sort of stimulation, the eventual aim of it when you're male is to you feel like an Adonis. And then you end up looking like Goofy. Oh, that's how it works, right? Okay, so it's not complicated stuff, and you shouldn't be telling it's a 9-year-old. It's 9-year-olds. I don't understand it. 9. Right? 9-year-olds are to learn to describe how gender inequality is linked to differences in power. Here we go. Right, so this is where we get to it, the power and oppression narratives of the Marxist structure that is being used here, the Marxist structure. Which again ties back to my original thing that I wrote 3 years ago, however long it was, which you can see in the Doobrys. 9-year-olds are to learn to describe how gender inequality is linked to differences in power within families and friendships, while 5-year-olds should express how they feel about their body and reflect on how they feel about their biological sex and gender. No! Right. So the key idea is, they've got the key idea, which comes from what is a learning plan for children on this issue. Human beings are born with the capacity to enjoy their sexuality throughout their life. Right? Throughout their life. They're born with it. Right? So they're sexual from zero. This is UNESCO. I wonder who's been feeding them that. Not the queer theorists. Not the gender ideologists. Not Susan Mitchie of the Communist Party. Not the nonsense that's been perpetrated by these nutters for a long time. Possibly. So let's have a look at the key ideas, because that's worth breaking down. Okay, so key ideas, here we go. Learners will be able to understand that sexuality involves emotional and physical attraction to others, which is knowledge. They put in brackets, knowledge, right? Okay. Describe ways that human beings feel pleasure from physical contact. For example, kissing, touching, caressing, sexual contact throughout their life. Brackets, knowledge, right? Imagine telling a 2-year-old that kissing is sexual, right? And in comes Auntie Phoebe, right, who's 94. Ooh, look at the lovely child. How to confuse children and Auntie Phoebe. What's wrong with these people? Right. Perceive that sexuality is a healthy part of being human. Attitudinal. Brackets, close bracket. I know what they're using here, because I'm a teacher, right? I know where they're coming from with this. Attitudinal, right? That's not a thing. Right? To a teacher, attitudinal doesn't matter. Right? It doesn't matter. A teacher imparts knowledge. Attitudinal is an individual thing that you deal with through learning. Right? So my attitude towards X 20 years ago was Y. My attitude towards X now is Z. Right? So therefore my attitude has changed. That's not a teacher's job. Right? That's an activist's job. So at the heart of this is activism. Go read the thing I've got in the Dooberries, right? At the heart of this is activism. We can see this now, which is the activism that will pervert what would normally be the teaching process of saying, look, there's this, and this. Now consider the lot. There's none of that. They've got an attitude, and they will have that attitude, right? So perceive that sexuality is a healthy part of being a human being is not something that you need to teach. It's innate. And it's like eating, okay? Right? Or walking. In time, it becomes a thing. You get it. There's info to be given. Info, that's all. You're not attitudinal, just information. Here you are. So what they're doing is they're bringing in attitudinal teaching, which in effect creation of activists. Attitudinal, you will have this attitude. That's an activist scam. Acknowledge that discrimination against people who are attracted to the same sex, or are believed to be attracted to the same sex, is wrong and can have negative effects on these individuals. Right, again, they've got attitude. That's not what it is, right? That is not what a teacher should be doing. Now, a teacher should be saying, we have a law that says, right? In some countries, they throw gays off buildings, right? In some countries, they do. How do you feel about that? What do you think about that? Being the most important thing. What do you think, not feel? Then you'd ask the kids, what do you think about it, right? Explain, well, it's treat people back, This is starting to sound more and more religious, doesn't it? Although we know that our morality is steeped in the UK, particularly in the Christian faith. There is a religiosity here, isn't there? That's saying that it's attitude, the attitude you will have. In which case they're enforcing the attitude on others in some way or another. We want people to think that. It doesn't matter. Sexuality is unimportant. It's who people love. Let people love. It's not a problem, right? Why would anybody be against? You have to be taught to be against that. And the greatest way that you can teach somebody to be against that is to force them to believe it if they're questioning. No, don't question it. You've got to believe it. Da-dum, 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 da-da-da-da-dum. Right. Communicate and understand different sexual feelings and talk about sexuality in an appropriate way, which they're saying is a skill. Whoa! I mean, this is just insane nonsense. It's like a minutiae of interference in the life of the individual. We didn't need this. Nobody needs this. It's Cobblers. Right. A government spokesman said the UK government does not agree with this guidance. We have not distributed it or promoted it to schools in England. We provide our own statutory guidance to schools. We are currently reviewing our guidance and will be looking at introducing age ratings to make sure teaching materials are high quality, factual and compliant with guidelines in order to keep children safe. However, the UK government is a signatory to UNESCO's Global Education 2030 agenda, which encompasses its sexuality guidance. Caroline Ansell, a Conservative MP on the Commons Education Select Committee, said Mr Sunak's upcoming sex education review needs to identify if this frankly alarming UNESCO guidance has influenced the relationships and sex education being taught in our schools. Absolutely right, except I would go further. Let's get out of it, right? Let's get out of the ESG. The UNESCO goals, there's 17 of them, I think, breaks down, I've done this before. Let's leave it all. We don't need some world organisation going, here are our goals and objectives, right? Sod off. Just let's get out of it altogether. Let's just drop it, because I think when we drop it, other countries will. You go back to the drawing board. And the drawing board is, there is no drawing board. We do not need an overarching body telling people how to live their lives. Okay, we need less of that, right? So UNESCO, again, in the article in the Dubras by me, there's the Telegraph thing as well, so you can have a look at both, right? Toxic parenting. That's what it is. Toxic parenting, right from the top. You will. It was done with the best of intentions. I always tell people, hand on the razor, right? It's done with the best of intentions, admittedly, but no. So I think we seem to be reaching a point here, don't we? It was added then by Caroline. She added, I will be writing to the Education Secretary, Gillian Keegan. Do something, Gillian, will you, you wibblegoat? Honest to God, what are you doing, woman? Get online, do a YouTube video. Right, hello all, we're going to lose all this. We're going to get rid of it all because it's infected and tainted with TQ plus nonsense and communism and whatever else, cultural Marxism, all the bad stuff we know's there. The teaching of Paulo Freire. Come on, stop fanning about. Are they just ill-informed peeps? I don't know, you tell me in the comments. I don't know. Right, now, Nick Fletcher, a Conservative MP on the committee, said the review desperately needs to look at whether the UNESCO framework had influenced teaching materials. It's not just influencing teaching materials, Nick, it's influencing everything you do on a daily basis. It has to go. It has to go. The problem with the UNESCO's goals is that they behave, right, if you work for a big company, think about this, right? If you work for a company, let's say 200 plus employees, they will have a competency framework at the top of which will be, what does the company want to achieve? So much in sales, so much in, staff satisfaction, customer satisfaction. They'll have all these things, right? And the way that works is that they interrogate their own goals every year and say, look, is this fit for purpose? Are we doing it right? Should we drop this? Should we add something new? The problem with UNESCO is it's doing the same thing as a company does, a business or an organisation, but it's not doing the review of its own goals. It's setting them in stone and saying, that's it. Top down, forced on everyone. We've got to get out of it. It's a straitjacket with concrete boots. We'll end up at the bottom of the Potomac with concrete boots on. Get rid of it, right? So, Nick said we desperately need to look at it. He added, I think it's hugely widespread. We need to blow the lid off this. And he's right, it is widespread. UNESCO's guidance echoes the outlook and many of the prescriptions of an earlier document issued by the World Health Organization, which caused a backlash from government. It's all the same thing, right? It's the top of the pyramid globally, and they've screwed up. They're all mad, right? That's what I think they've gone nuts in their rarefied atmosphere, in a kind of perverted Peruvian oxygen. Not rich, because gasping for breath at the top of a mountain somewhere. They've lost the plot. UNESCO's guidance, the WHO guidance, caused a backlash. MPs and activists following a Telegraph report on its recommendation aimed at toddlers. The backlash came, and rightly so. Both organisations, which are part of the UN, recommend that children under the age of 10 should be taught about masturbation. I've said it a dozen times before. They'll find out for themselves. We all did. The UNESCO guidance published in 2018 directly informs sexual education laws in Wales, according to Welsh Government documents, and an earlier version of the same guidance was cited in laws passed in Scotland, though neither country adopted all of its recommendations. You then go to a Welsh Government spokesman who said, the report was just one of a range of reports analysed and considered during the development of the RASC code, and they just come out with nonsense, don't they? Just absolute unmitigated bum gravy, because Wales is in real trouble. Boy, Wales in trouble. What is taught in schools in Wales is set out clearly in the RSC code and guidance. A Scottish Government spokesman said it was for councils and to school decide how to deliver sexual education within the framework provided by Scotland's curriculum for excellence. Bureaucrats. Ignorant, stupid bureaucrats. The UNESCO guidance adopts what has been described as a positive definition of sexual health, which rejects the conventional definition of it being merely the absence of disease or dysfunction. Instead, it points to a widely used WHO definition, which asserts that good sexual health also requires the possibility of having sexual experiences that are pleasurable, right? When you hit the right age, right, and things start to change, and I don't know what it's like for women, I don't know what it's like for men, I don't know what it's like for girls, but I know what it's like for boys, right? Start to change. There is not anyone in the world that needs to point you in the direction of your own cock and balls. I'm sorry, there isn't, right? And you'll get it, and you'll be like, what's that? I'm going to do that again. And then eventually you'll get more than a sharp pain and a puff of wind, right? Okay? And then suddenly, oh, you are you, right? That's the game. We don't need an instruction manual for it. Tossers. Right. So instead it points to a widely used WHO definition, which asserts that good sexual health also requires the possibility of having sexual experiences that are pleasurable. Who needs to write that? Right? The Scottish Government points to this definition in its legislation for schools. It is understood that thousands of school children in England have undertaken sexual education programmes informed by UNESCO guidance, despite it never having been subject to parliamentary scrutiny. Just try it. So, see, this is what I've said about the right and the left before, innit? The right, missionary position, the left, Shiger Afghan. Here's an instruction manual, 120 pages long. This is exactly what it is. The insanity of the liberal left. Not the old left, before you start moaning at me, right? Guidance issued in 2014 for secondary schools by Hackney Learning Trust, a government-funded body responsible for education improvements in the borough, which has 55 secondary schools and with more than 40,000 students, cited an earlier version of the UNESCO document under a section titled Evidence of Effectiveness. What does good SRE look like? What does good sex education look like? In advice for teachers of children aged 11 and above, it adopts the WHO definition of sexual health being as something which requires the possibility of having pleasurable and safe sexual experiences. Safe sexual experiences. When you're a kid, isn't most of it furtive and slightly dangerous? You know? Isn't it? Don't come in! It's all for... These people are insane, right? A Hackney education spokesman said his guidance issued in 2014 is no longer used or promoted and has been superseded by DfE statutory guidance, which was made compulsory in 2020. They keep rewriting it all the time. A UNESCO spokesman said his guidance is a UN multi-agency document based on evidence of the positive impact of context-appropriate and age-appropriate comprehensive sexuality education. Isn't that amazing, right? If you point the dogs in the right direction, the dogs will go in the right direction. That's what it is. This is not something that needs educating. They just need information, left around. Like in doctor's surgeries or, in the school library that just gives a little bit of information about what you need to start your journey of self-discovery. Not weirdos doing some kind of pathetic join the dots as you go from a frantically masturbating 11-year-old to a fully blown 21-year-old BDSM fanatic who likes to put eclairs up his nose. I don't care. This interference is constant. They added, so what they've said is it was produced following the request of member states. It's up to each member state to decide whether or not to implement it. It's just all such a waste of time and money. However, in addition to targeting policymakers, the UNESCO document, here's the interesting bit, suggests that non-governmental organisations and young people can use it as an advocacy or accountability tool to lobby government. Look at my article on UNESCO's goals, on the COMBB model and on Susan Mitchie. Go and have a look. Called it 3 years ago, right? This is it's hidden. All of this RSA bullshit is a Trojan horse for activism and critical social justice. Go and have a look, right? Tell me I'm wrong. Go prove me wrong. Nobody has yet. It's been 3 years. I'm waiting. Go prove me wrong, right? Right. A book used by teachers, just to finish it off, a book used by teachers in schools that the School of Sexuality Education promotes on its website. Great Relationships in Sex Education advises teachers to emphasise that love and affection are often important parts of good sex, but not always. For others, good sex is quick, rough and anonymous. You can also explore the fact that some people enjoy feeling pain during sex, which is often referred to as kink or BDSM. The nutters have taken over the asylum. What you've got here is this isn't just like somebody beavering away in a government department, or an academic tossing off to Shota. This isn't that, okay? This is UNESCO, folks. This is... You don't need a tin hat for this one, okay? All you need is to be ignorant enough not to bother to look. Because this is what we're seeing, is a top-down imposition of critical social justice, queer theory, postmodernism, everything that everybody suddenly goes, when they get there, because it takes a while, you go, oh, that's got nothing to do with it. And eventually you go, oh my God, it's all of it. Postmodernism, the other, with the teats, queer theory. It's all there. It's all there, right? Coming from UNESCO. It is a Trojan horse for creating activist students with only one political leaning, and that is critical social justice, the most dangerous and single destructive force on the planet now, bar a nuclear bomb. Well, that's me in mad Ed in the Clouds territory today, and I hope your day goes better than mine. I'm going to go get some eclairs. See you later.